Hey, what is going on, everybody? It's the Mexican coming to you guys with a brand new video, and today we're going to be talking about something a bit different. I am going to, as some of you guys may know, the Toronto Maple Leafs are, and I know this is heresy, but my second favorite team. Now, don't get me wrong, I am still a diehard Red Wings fan to the end, and if it comes between the two, I will pick the Red Wings 100%. But yes, I have been a Toronto Maple Leafs fan for pretty much my entire life. My grandpa was a Maple Leafs and Canadians fan. My dad is a Maple Leafs fan, and my mom is a Habs fan. And I just kind of took to Toronto. But I wanted to talk about this because I posted this on Twitter a little while ago, that the Auston Mathews contract, which we're going to go over today, is indicative of a larger issue with Toronto. Now, there were talks a while ago about this topic where basically Kyle Dubas screwed up in not signing Mathews to a much longer term to essentially an 8-year deal. Because now, as Toronto is already, over the cap by like a mil or two. So now on top of that, at least next season, they're going to be paying Auston Mathews even more. And right now, he's already making $11.6 million a year. That is his cap hit. And they could have kept him at this. Now, if we look through his career, his entry-level contract was a $925,000 cap hit, 3.775 AAV. So he could have, obviously, this was a 3-year entry-level contract. And this was good, essentially. Like I said, it's an entry-level contract. He's making not league minimum. $925,000 is the max that a rookie can make in an entry-level contract. And let's see how we did those first 3 years. 2016, 2017, 40 goals, 29 assists for 69 points in all 82 games. For Team North America, 2 goals, 1 assist for 3 points in 3 games. 2017, 2018, 34 goals, 29 assists, 63 points in 62 games. 2018, 2019, 37 goals, 36 assists, 73 points in 68 games. So for his entire entry-level contract, he was pretty much a point per game except for his rookie year, which is kind of to be expected. Your rookie year, you're usually never going to burn the place down. Obviously, he kind of did here, but your rookie year, you're more likely than not going to hit, a point per game. So he had, in total, like 200 points, over 200 points in his first 3 years. That's just facts. He had over 200 points, close to 300 points in his first 2 years, his first 3 years in that entry-level contract. And so, rightfully so, he was signed to a $11.6 million contract for, here's the problem, he was only signed to it for 5 years. Now, I say that's a problem because, like I said, Toronto Maple Leafs have already gotten themselves into a cap problem. Now, you're likely, a lot of the guys that are on that team, like, you're not going to have Nylander next year. The Bertuzzi will likely not be on the team, and he already commands, I think he's commanding like $5 million, something like that. But, Tree Living didn't help by signing Ryan Reeves to a 3-year deal. And, this year alone, you also have Klingberg and whatnot. So you don't have small contracts on the books. This is why they're over the cap. But next season, even with Nylander leaving, Nylander has a fairly big contract. But even with Nylander and Bertuzzi and whatnot leaving, he's going to have a $13.2 million cap hit. So whatever money you're saving from not having Bertuzzi and Nylander and whatnot, most of it, if not all of it's already going to be taken up by this $13.2 million cap hit in order to keep Mathews on the team, as well as maybe keep Tavares and Marner. You're going to have to move a lot of pieces, and that weakens Toronto significantly. Now, this isn't an uncommon issue. There's a lot of teams up against the cap right now, like teams like Boston, Carolina, Dallas, I think, is pretty far up against the cap. Edmonton's pretty up against the cap. You've got a lot of these teams up against the cap, but most of them are pieces that are going to be moved or likely not going to stay there, or likely on like 1 year deals and stuff like that, because the cap's going up next season, which is important to note. But even if the cap's projected to go up like 4 or 5 million, something like that, even with the cap going up, you're still not going to have enough money to re-sign Nylander with this Mathews contract. You're not going to have enough money to re-sign Nylander to what he wants, because, if Tavares, Marner, and Mathews are all getting what they want, which is probably 10 mil plus contracts. Tavares may be the only one that doesn't get 10 million, but it's hard to argue. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But you're going to have those guys wanting 10 million. And why should Nylander had just as good of a season as all of them? So why should he compromise? And if you somehow manage to find a way to re-sign Nylander for 10 million, that's over $40 million in the cap, which, like I said, if it goes up 4 or 5 million, you're still only going to be, you're just going to be just under 90 million, if not at 90 million, something like that. I can't do the math right now, but you're going to end up having this problem where 4 guys are taking up half of your cap space. And if you want to build a Stanley Cup contending team, you can't have just 4 guys taking up that cap space. And not to mention, you got Ryan Reeves in there for 3 more years. Ryan Reeves is getting to the point where he's not going to be easily movable. Especially on a 3-year deal. Nobody wants to have Ryan Reeves on their team for 2 years. Even if you try to move him at the trade deadline for another asset, best you're going to get is like late round draft pick, 5th round at best. Because Ryan Reeves doesn't add anything. And since you got him for, like I said, you got him for multiple years, no one's going to want to take Ryan Reeves for 2 years. He's coming to the end of his career and he's fucking useless. Yes, maybe he'll have one or two highlight reel hits. He'll have maybe 1 or 2 solid fights, but that's all he brings. And since you've got him on the books now, that's even more cap. It's basically dead cap, in my opinion. Ryan Reeves is basically dead cap. He doesn't add anything. So now you've got $40 million locked up in 4 players, plus Ryan Reeves' contract, which I don't even remember what it was, but I don't think it's much, to be fair. Plus, you're gonna have guys who want to stay. Your defensive core is still gonna need to get paid, and what do you do then? You're not gonna have the depth, which is a big problem that Toronto has had for a long time. They've been very front loaded, and that doesn't win you. Being incredibly front loaded doesn't win you Stanley Cups. If that was the case, Edmonton would have like 2 or 3 cups already in the modern era since McDavid and Draisaitl came up. You would have a team like Florida would have likely won the cup last season, or just a bunch of teams that are front loaded, like they don't make it very far, and we've seen that in this year's playoffs. Colorado went from really deep. They had guys like Helm. And I can't even remember all the guys that were on the team at the point because I don't really care about Colorado. But they had the depth to go all the way. Tampa Bay, the thing that made them able to win back-to-back cups is they had depth to bring them all the way and keep contending. Pittsburgh, who has been really good at it for a while, and I hate to say it, but Pittsburgh's been very good at having that solid depth. Las Vegas, I wanted to say New Vegas for a second, but that's for a video on my gaming channel. But Las Vegas won very handedly because they have depth. Las Vegas basically has 2 first lines and 2 second lines. So you gotta manage your cap properly in order to be able to get to that, the end of the road, in order to be able to get to the Stanley Cup, which is what everybody wants, obviously. So now you're in the territory, like I said, of it's been a joke with Toronto. They can't make it past the first round. They made it past the first round, but then they got their asses kicked by Florida. And it's indicative of, like I said, a problem Toronto's already had, which is being very offense and front loaded with massive contracts that don't allow them to have enough depth. And that's what I'm seeing here with the Mathews contract. They could have signed Mathews to an 8-year deal. You would have had at least 3 more years of that $11.6 million contract which would help. Now you got to worry about $2 more million in that cap being used. Like I said, yes, the cap is going up to $4 or $5 million next season. Yes, guys like Bertuzzi and Klingberg, they're not going to be on the team next year, and likely Nylander won't be either unless you make the space. And like I said, if you make that space for him, you're not going to have enough cap space to add solid depth. You're going to basically be in the same position the Red Wings are. You're going to have a first line that can play with the best of them and outpace them, and have 3 third lines essentially. And that can get you to the playoffs. Being incredibly front loaded with mediocre depth can launch you into the playoffs, but it's not going to get you very far. We've seen it with Minnesota last year too. Minnesota's got a really solid first line, but after that, it's basically 3 third lines, a second line and 2 third lines. So I guess that wasn't really Minnesota, but they didn't have a lot of offense either. Minnesota was very defensive, so they had that one line, and then the rest were pretty much depth forwards. So it's an interesting concept that I've thought about for a while now, and it's something that I think Toronto fans have noticed, but Toronto fans don't really want to acknowledge it, because that means that means that Auston Mathews in the long run is hurting this team. Yes, on the scoreboard and face values and stuff like that, face stats, he's not hurting the team at all. He's helping the team significantly. He's a massive part of why the team is so good. But for the next 4 years at $13.2 million, yeah, sure, the cap will probably go up, one or two more times after that. But once his contract takes effect. But at the same time, $13.2 million is a lot. And like I said, plus you got Marner and Tavares that you're likely going to want to re-sign. And then on top of that, do you try to re-sign Nylander? I don't think you do try to re-sign Nylander. I think you let Nylander go to free agency, and I think Toronto's perfectly happy with that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Tree Living can manage this. And it's like look, this is going to take up 15.87% of the cap as it currently stands. Obviously, it's the cap's going up next season, at least it's projected to. So that'll probably be a bit less, but even this one, it takes up just under 15%. So throw that on top of Marner and Tavares, you're going to have like half of your cap tied up in those 4 players. So let me know what you guys think. I know I'm kind of, asking for the Sharks to fucking bite me by dipping my toe into the world that is the Toronto Maple Leafs media and fan base. But this is a topic that I really felt like I should talk about as a Toronto fan myself. Like I said, Toronto is my second favorite team. My first is Detroit. It will always be Detroit. Nothing will ever change that. It's something that I don't see a lot of people talking about anymore. And I figured, hell, why not me? So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I really want to see Toronto fans' thoughts on it, because we know they're always so neutral and so forgiving and kind and just great people to talk to about their hockey team. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. My name is, as always, the Mexinadian, and I will talk to you guys later. Adios.